Okay. So I introduced myself, introduced the book I'm doing.
Yes.
I should probably open it up to the book so I may refer to it. I'm Dr. Todd Johnson, the Brem Chair of Worship Theology and the Arts at Fuller Theological Seminary. My expertise in particular is in the area of worship and mostly in the practical concerns of churches. At this time, I'd like to talk to you about the book of Judges. Judges begins a new era, that is, a time in which Israel's being led by judges, maybe more accurately translated as chieftains or rulers, individuals that are given opportunities to lead Israel, possibly in conquest, but oftentimes to lead them back to their covenant relationship with God. Judges records the history between Joshua and the kingship of Saul, approximately 13th century to 11th century before the Common Era. The content of Judges is a book with two distinct themes. The first theme, it's a book of great characters. The second theme is it introduces the cycle of retribution. There's a number of great characters who are judges in the book of Judges. Some were military leaders like Barak and Gideon. Some were prophets like Deborah and Samuel. Some were Nazarites like Samson. And some were priests like Eli. You'll be surprised, however, when you look at the people who are judges, how many of them wouldn't pass a background check today. These are unusual choices. So keep in mind this theological perspective. The people God chooses for God's purposes says more about God than it does the people God has chosen. An example would be Samson. Samson was a man of deep, impulsive passions, hot temper, and he was arrogant. Still, he was used as an instrument of retribution against the Philistines, as God has promised that he would. You know the story of Samson, for the most part, I'm sure. He falls in love with Delilah. She tricks him into giving him his secret of his strength, that is the Nazarite vow, and that once he breaks that vow, he loses his strength. He is captured, imprisoned, blinded. And then we have the conclusion, verses 23 and following in chapter 16. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to their god Dagon, and to rejoice, for they said, "Our God has given us Samson, our enemy, into our hand." When the people saw him, they praised their God, and they said, "Our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, who has killed many of us." And when their hearts were merry, they said, "Call Samson, and let him entertain us." So I called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. They made him stand between two pillars. And Samson said to the attendant who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, so I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and lords of the Philistines were there, and on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women that looked on while Samson performed. Then Samson called to the Lord and said, "Lord God, remember me and strengthen me only this once, O God, so that with this one act of revenge I may pay back the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And Samson grasped the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, his right hand on the one, his left hand on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." He strained with all his might, and the house fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So those he killed at his death were more than those he killed during his life. Then his brothers and family came down and took him, and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father, and he judged Israel 20 years. The book of Judges is also a book that introduces us to the cycle of retribution. This might be understood by some of you who might be my age that had music classes in the 70s, where your music teacher would play Drop the Needle for a test. That is, they'd put on a record like Rhapsody in Blue or Beethoven's Ninth. Put the needle somewhere on it and you'd hear it and have to identify it. If you play Drop the Needle in Judges, you're going to find yourself in one of four places. Either God's people have sinned and are experiencing their consequences of their sin, or they are crying out to God to be restored, or God has restored them, or they are sinning again. So this cycle goes on and on. One of the things that you find out about Judges is that they don't learn from generation to generation, but keep repeating this. You hear again and again, the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They experience the consequences of their unfaithfulness, and they cry out to God for help. And God restores them or punishes their enemies. An example of this would be Deborah. In chapter 3 of the book of Judges, the Israelites cry out to God for their sins, and God raises up Ehud, who delivers them from the Moabites. Then God raises up Deborah, a prophetess, to be a judge. And she leads them to victory over the land of Canaan. But they once again sin and fall away even after this great victory. Again sin and follow unfolds through the story of Deborah. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. So the Lord sold them into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan. At that time, Deborah, a prophetess, wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm tree between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites came up to her for judgment. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Up, for this is the day which the Lord has given us Sisera into your hand. The Lord is indeed going out before you." So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 warriors following him. And the Lord threw Sisera and all its chariots and all his army into a panic before Barak. And Sisera got down from the chariot and fled away on foot, while Barak pursued the chariots and the army all the way. And the army of Sisera fell by the sword, and no one was left. So on that day, God subdued King Jabin of Canaan before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites bore harder and harder on King Jabin of Canaan, and they destroyed King Jabin of Canaan. Then Deborah and Barak sang a song on that day, saying, "When the locks are long in Israel, when the people offer themselves willingly, bless the Lord. Hear, O kings, give ear, O princes. To the Lord I will sing. I will make melody to the Lord, the God of Israel." And at the conclusion of that chapter, "So perish all your enemies, O Lord, but may your friends be like the sun as it rises in its might." And the land had rest for 40 years. And the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. As we think about the news of our world, and the characters in that news, both inside and outside of the church, might we be reminded of the unswerving faithfulness of God in spite of the fickle faith of God's people? Might it cause us to take stock of our lives of faith, individually and collectively? And might it give us pause to thank God and to pray for the women and men of faith who God has provided to lead us?